today. So we covered the very basics of Excel last week, right? We did very easy stuff. Today, we're going to move forward and move into some more difficult stuff. We're going to look at manipulating some data. We are going to look at highlighting, formatting, sorting, and filtering. And then we're going to close out the evening by looking at charts and graphs, which you most undoubtedly have been asked to do in your classes. If you're certainly a supply chain major, and I would venture to guess many more majors as well. So we're going to cover those topics today. We're going to get as far as we can. The next session we do, which I believe is in March, I don't have the date in front of me, but I can look that up before we leave tonight. We're going to cover pivot tables. Pivot tables in themselves, I could probably spend half a semester on in a class, but we'll cover the high levels, right? We'll cover the basics, get you comfortable with creating pivot tables and what to do with pivot tables. Our last session, which I believe is in the very beginning of April or end of March, and I'll put those dates out. We're going to talk about what do you do with all these tools you learned with the data set. So how do you visualize the data and how do you actually draw some conclusions? Just reading a text here. Let me pull this up real quick. How do you unlink a pivot table from a chart? That's a great question. We'll cover that as well. I'll actually make a note of that so we can cover that. Great question, Dexter. The last session, again, we are going to work on drawing conclusions. Okay, we're going to use the tools that we've learned in these 3 sessions and draw some conclusions on the data set that we're working with. We're going to do some of that tonight, very basic conclusions we're going to draw today. We're going to analyze the data. I sent out a data set earlier today. Does anybody not have that data set? Wonderful. All right, so let me begin by sharing my screen, and I'm going to pull up this data set here. Actually, I forgot I had to reboot, so that means I've got to pull up this data set again. I apologize. But at least the system made me reboot for a virus update before our session started. Because usually, as you know, that happens after you're in something. All right, let me grab this open here. It is opening. I want to move this over here and then allow me to share my screen. Here we go. Oh, no, here we go. There we go. Somebody please confirm for me that you can see an Excel spreadsheet.
I can see it.
Lovely, thank you. All right, so this is the same spreadsheet that I had last week. I added another row of information. And what I did was I went back to the original data set where I pulled this from, and I pulled the description of the column header. So some of them obviously were quite descriptive. Customer age, there's not too much more I can tell you about that, right? I'm sure you figured that out. The attrition flag, I've got whether it's a 1 or 0, it's already been converted to text for us, so that's not a big deal. I'm going to come back and cover what that means. So all these demographics are pretty easy. The reason I did this is we go to the right here in our table. There's some things that were not so intuitive. So credit limit on the credit card, that was pretty intuitive. Total revolving balance on the credit card. Open to buy credit line, this average open to buy. So that's average of the last 12 months of the credit line open. Change in transaction amount from Q4 over Q1. So I added some description to these rather cryptic titles at the end of the data set, and we're going to cover those as we move forward. So we've got this data set. I just always struggle with where to move this gallery here. Nope, not there. That's not going to work. All right, we'll do there. The data set itself, it's always important to know what you're looking at. In this particular case, we're looking at a data set of customers of a particular bank and their credit card habits, if you will. And the chief identifying factor is this attrition flag, which essentially means, and I'm going to show you how to filter in a minute, we either have attrited customers or existing customers. So we have customers that have kept their credit cards, and we have customers who have let their credit cards go, right? So banks have a general concern about churning. And what churning means essentially is people who go get a credit card, they keep it for 4 months, they get rid of it, they go to another bank. keep it for several months, get rid of it, go to another bank. And we all know why they do that. They do that because they attempt to get the initial teasers, if you will. Hey, sign up for our credit card and you get $100. Sign up for our credit card, you get 0% interest for 6 months, something to that effect. There's always something as companies attempt to compete to get you to get their credit cards. So banks have a concern. It costs money to service these accounts. So we've got data for customers. And as we talked about last week, we've got, if I go down to the bottom here, 10,129 records. So we have a fairly substantial data set of customers. We don't have a time frame, which is interesting, but we'll just assume this is recent data right now for our purposes. And we have some information about the customers. We have information about what kind of credit card they have, how long they've had a relationship with the bank, the number of products held by the customer. That means essentially accounts. This person has 6 distinct accounts at this bank, maybe a savings account, a checking account, a money market, and 3 credit cards. Who knows? And then more information that we're going to get into. So the first thing we need to understand about our data, do we have good data? Do we have a complete set of data? So anytime we go to attempt to analyze something, analyze data, for instance, let's say we wanted to analyze some criteria by age. Well, one thing I would want to know is, do I have valid ages here? Now we can write some VB script behind the scenes that would come back and kick out anything that's an invalid age. We would hope that whoever pulled the data did a good pool of data from SQL, whether it come from a database or from some other tool, that they gave us good data. But whenever we do calculations, we want to know that. One really easy way, even if you have 10,000 rows, to determine whether you have good data for a particular criteria is using a sort function. For numeric data, that is. So let's say I want to look at customer age. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, if you remember, you click top left, you get the whole data set, right? I'm going to sort and filter. I'm going to do, you have a couple options. If you sort smallest to largest, largest to smallest, it's going to sort based on this first column. If you select multiple columns, as we have, we've selected all the columns. We're going to do a custom sort. Let me do this. Let me turn this off. I accidentally left this on. Let's turn that filter off. All right, we're going to do a custom sort. In this case, we get a pop-up box that says, what do you want to sort? In our case, we want to sort not by total count change. We want to sort by customer age. Now, you need to have this little my data has headers flag checked. If not, if you uncheck that, then all you get are the column letters, which you could do it that way. But what it's going to do then is it's going to sort your column header along with your data. So we're going to actually go back and put our header flag back on and say, I want to sort by customer age. And that's it right now. So I'm going to sort all my data by customer age. Let's go back to our sort. I forgot to show you. I want to do largest to smallest, or I can change it to smallest to largest. In this case, I want to do smallest to largest. All right, so my smallest age is 26. My lowest age is 26. And if I look at my largest age, it's 73. What that tells me essentially is the range of the age of customers I have. If I had an age in here that came out at the end of 170, you would know right away, uh-oh, I've got a bad data row, right? I've got a bad age. Nobody can be 170 years old. So you can do this very high level visual checking of, does my data reasonable? Does it make sense? It's a reasonability test. Now I could tell you some of the pitfalls. Don't ever select a column and do a sort. In the old days, you never got this warning. Now you get a warning. Do you really want to do this? What do you want to do? What are you thinking? It's trying to ask you. Expand the selection, or do you actually want to continue with the current selection? If I continue, what that does, it will only sort this column. That means whatever age that goes with 822051858 will no longer be 26 because we would sort it. So let me actually show you that, because this is a horrible thing that people used to do all the time before Microsoft put this warning in. I can't tell you how many times I've had people come back to me and say, something's wrong with my data. It's because they took a column like this. Now, let's unsort this all the way. Let's go back to our original. Remember, we have the undo command up here. I showed you that last week. Very handy tool. So if I just take this column, notice my first client number is 818-77008. They are 49 years old. I'm going to go ahead and do this sort. And I'm going to say, oh, no, I know what I'm doing, Excel. Don't tell me what to do. And I'm going to go ahead and sort this. And I want to do it by, let's put my data headers on here. And I want to do it by age. And I want to go ahead and sort this. Now you'll notice what happened. Unfortunately, I included my second header row, but that's okay. You'll notice that the age is all changed. My first customer of 70008 is now 26 years old, because all I did was sort this one column. There's very few applications in life where you would just sort one column. There may be. I've never come across one in my many, many years of using Excel, but I'm sure there is one somewhere. So now Microsoft has the warning box to prevent you from messing up your data too terribly. All right, so now we're going to have some other options here. Right now, we don't need this information. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this row, and I'm going to come down here in the option box and say, I want to hide this. I don't want to see that right now. And you'll see Excel represents that by row 1 and row 3 and then a double line. That's telling you that there's a row that's hidden here. All you have to do is click here and unhide if you want to see it again. Now you got to do it right, apparently. There it is. Okay, so you can unhide it to bring it back, but right now it's just clouding up things. We don't want to see this right now, so let's just go ahead and hide that. Another good tool for determining whether you have valid data or not is to do a filter. So in this case, we should only have two types of customers: existing customer and the tried customer. So if I go ahead and you go up into your column headers, just click on any one of these, that's fine. You go over to your ribbon, your home ribbon, which is the first one after file. And then on the right here, you'll see the sort and filter, which is where I've been doing my sorting. There's a filter option. When you click on the filter option, you get these little drop-down arrows for each column. If you click on that drop-down arrow, you'll get all the options that are available in that particular column of data. In this case, I see I only have two options. If I saw an entry here that said blanks, let me do this. Let's do this. Let's just take these out. Now, if I look at the filter, I have an option now that says blanks. That tells me that I have rows of data that don't have a valid entry in them, because I'm looking for only one of two options. There shouldn't be any blanks here. A customer has to be one of the two, according to the data set definition. Now, you may say, hey, that's pretty easy, but let's say the blanks were actually down in row 5,000 somewhere, and you would not necessarily see them unless you look at every row, right? So you can use this filter to see if you have some invalid data very quickly. It's by no means a fully encompassing check of whether you have valid data or not, but it's a very quick, easy way to check to get some kind of reasonability. For instance, every customer should have a card category. They shouldn't be on here. This is credit cards. So I'm going to look, and sure enough, we have blue, gold, platinum, silver. I have no options that say blank. That's good. I have some confidence in this card category data. You really can't necessarily, you could do this with age. You could accomplish the same thing that I had indicated earlier. If you come down here and see an age of 176, you can know right away, golly, I've got some bad data here somewhere. Now you can find that data. Cancel that. Let's put these back. Oops. Put these back. Now, I told you that we have blanks in this data, but I don't know where they are. There's 10,129 rows. All you have to do is hit the undo the select all, put a check by the option you want to find, and then Excel will show you only the records of the filter that you picked. So now I know here's the records that have invalid data. And then you as an analyst need to determine what to do. Do I drop these records? I don't know what type of customer they are. I go through this with a lot of my graduate classes. You need to make a determination of what you want to do. So for instance, let's say we have, let's go back and get through all of this. Let's undo all this all the way to auto filter on. All right, so our data should be back the way it was. Oh, and I didn't show you that. So the undo button undoes your last, and you probably know this already, undoes your last action. There's a drop-down arrow next to it where you can go back and undo all the way back to several actions ago. Like here's work I was doing this afternoon. I can undo all that work. So you can pick how far you want to go back. In this case, I changed the row height 5 times. I could undo all of those. I could undo my auto filter. I could undo my clear. You get the idea. And there's also a redo button, which will allow you to redo the last number of items. I don't know how many it tells you or it provides for you. All right, so let's see here. If this were an age, let's say we had some ages that were no good, and you found them by using your filter command, because at the bottom you saw blanks and you said, uh-oh, I need to take a look at those. I have these records with no age. Well, you need to make a determination. If you're analyzing something that has nothing to do with age, let's say you're analyzing the percentage of male versus female customers who let their accounts go. You don't care about age. Should you drop this whole row of data? The answer is most likely no. You've got good data, whether the customer is a male or female. You're not analyzing anything to do with age, so you don't necessarily want to just delete these 3 rows and say they're invalid. Rows can be valid or invalid based on what analysis you are attempting to accomplish. All right, so let's undo that, and let's undo me wiping out the ages. Okay, so we're back to our data set. All right, sorting and filtering. How are we doing? Does anybody have a question? All right, so either this is very easy or I'm just covering it so well that it's sinking right in. We'll go with the latter. All right, let's talk about formatting. All right, you probably already know you can change fonts. You can do all kinds of things with formatting. Here in your font categories, you can align. We covered this last week. We didn't necessarily cover fonts, but it's pretty intuitive. I can make certain things bold or unbold or those kind of things by simply selecting the cells and applying whatever criteria I want to apply. I could highlight all their backgrounds. I could make them all red font, right? Based on what I've highlighted. So that's not really very reasonable if I have 10,000 rows of data. So let's say we wanted to do something such as, let me think here. What do I want to do? Let me see if I can come up with something interesting. How about if we want to highlight, let's go over here to our data, average utilization ratio. So that basically is, if I have a good definition here, if I unhide this column, credit used divided by total credit. So if I have a $10,000 credit limit and I'm only using 1,000 of it, I've only made purchases for $1,000, I have what? A 10% utilization ratio, right? Credit used, 1,000 divided by my $10,000 of credit available. So that's what this is. So let's say we want to flag anybody. We want to identify anybody who has a credit utilization ratio higher than, I don't know, 70%. That's somebody using a ton of credit. And as a bank, I'm most likely happy because they're probably not making full payments. There's a good chance they're not making full payments. So I'm making interest off them. However, it's also a concern, right? Banks use this as an indicator of future ability to pay. If you're using all your outstanding credit, odds are there's going to be a point you're not going to be able to keep up with the bills. It's a weak, but it's a predicting factor of ability to pay bills. But let's not go into that. So I want to flag every one of these. Say you just got this assignment from your boss and say, okay, I got to flag these. All right, well, I could go through 10,000 rows and say, well, I want to flag everyone like this, and I want to make them a red bold font. Okay, this is what the requirements are for my task. Anything over, what did I say, 70%? All right, so I'm going to have to go through 10,000 rows and do this. Right? Okay, that's not going to happen. There's no way you can do that. You could. Hopefully you're an hourly employee, so you'd spend a lot of hours, make a lot of money. So what we want to do essentially is we want to conditionally format. We call this conditionally formatting. I want to format these cells based on their values. There's a couple ways to do all this. In your home ribbon, again, right in the middle, there's a conditional formatting button. So if you click on any one of these particular cells, we go into conditional formatting, you'll see a pop-up box that gives you all kinds of options. Excel has built in all kinds of pre-programmed options to format data. You could say format any cell that has a value greater than, less than, between, equal to, text that contains. You can read through all this. Greater than sounds a lot like what we want to do. We want to format a cell for any value that's greater than 70%, right? So let's see what Excel opens up for us. All right, format cells that are greater than, and it's asking me a value. Excel is going to default the value that you picked. That's where the 10.5% comes. That's not what I want. I want to put a 0.70 in here, 70%. And then it's going to say, what do you want to do with it? In this case, there's several predefined formats that you can use. As it turns out, let's do the light red fill with dark red text. That's what I just did manually. I'm going to say, okay. And you'll say, well, gee, nothing happened. Well, I formatted this cell, right? This cell is not greater than 70, so nothing happened. If I click on this cell and hit the conditional formatting link at the top, if I come down to manage rules, because what you did is you set up a conditional formatting rule, you'll see the rule is here now. The rule is cell value greater than 0.7. Here's my formatting, what it's going to look like. It applies to only one cell, right? So one easy way, when you put in a colon, it always does that, but put in a colon and come back. We're going to talk about what the dollar signs mean here in a minute. I'm going to put in my U, and I'm going to put in 10,129. I'm going to apply, and you'll notice now all throughout column U, anywhere the value is greater than 0.70 is now highlighted, right? In the red that I selected. Now, conditional formats can be pretty squishy. They can be pretty confusing, to say the least. Let's say you need the whole row done. Okay, this is great. I want the whole row to be formatted in the red, light red with dark red font, based on whether the value of this particular cell is greater than 0.7. Okay, so let's go into our conditional formatting. Let's go to our manage rules. That means obviously we're going to have to change a cell here, or we're going to have to change a value. In this case, we can't just say cell value is equal to anymore. We're going to have to use a formula to set this up. Okay, so we're going to edit our rule. In this case, we used one of the pre-formatted conditional formats. We can't do that anymore. We're going to have to use, let me see, I think I can use it right there. We want to change this to use a formula, right? So in this case, let's just worry about this first one. Matter of fact, I'm going to do this. Since we can't use this, I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to select this row, which I already had selected. I'm going to delete this rule. Let's start over. Okay, we can't use that anymore. So let's start a new one. I'm going to do a new rule. In this case, we have some options already prefabbed. Format only top or bottom ranked values. I'll come back to that in a minute. Use a formula to determine which cells to format. In this case, I want to format the row based on a cell. So in this case, I still want to base it on this U column, right? And I want that to be greater than 0.70. You don't need that 0 necessarily. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and set my format now. I want my font to be bold. I want the color to be red. I want to fill the cell with this light red, they call it. I call it pink. It's not in here, right? So I can go down to more colors and I can go select, I want this one right here and say, okay. So there's my formatting options. In this case, when I hit okay, nothing's going to happen because I'm only applying it to this one cell. Nothing's going to highlight, right? It got rid of the ones that I deleted. Now we need this to go across the whole row. What we need to do is we need to edit our rule. Now let's talk dollar signs. If you don't know what dollar signs are your anchoring points. When you have a dollar sign in front of a U, that means that U is never going to change. If you copy that formula somewhere else to column V, it's still going to say column U, right? And if you don't have a dollar sign, it's going to change your reference. I'll show an example of that later. But for right now, I don't want to base every one of these rows off of row number 3, do I? In this case, I need to get rid of this one, right? So I want every row to be formatted off the value for its corresponding row. Excuse me, hold on. I'm going to say okay here. Now we have an issue with the formula. I'm sorry, we have an issue with the applies to. Right now, I'm only applying right here. I want to apply this particular row or this particular format all the way down to 10,129. Just stay with me. What this is saying is I want to, for every row from 3 to 10,129, I want to format that row based on what's in column U and determine whether it's greater than 0.7 or not. So if I hit apply, I'm back to where I was, right? But it didn't do the row, did it? It only did the one cell because we've only applied it to column U. I'm going to apply this to column A3 through U 10,129. That's essentially my whole data set. Now, if I hit apply, bingo. Now, one thing I should have mentioned at the beginning of this session, the best way to learn Excel is to go play with it. You can go read a book. You can go watch a video. There's a lot of great Excel tutorials out there. And in the last session, I'll go through some of those and give them to you. For years and years, if I don't know how to do something, I just Google it. And sure enough, somebody's done it before. There's pretty much nothing in Excel that you have that somebody has not tried. And you can, for 98, 99% of what you need to do, find some instructions on how to do it. And every now and then, and I have this a couple times in my career where it's just not possible. You can't do it, which means you need to write some code, and that's a different class. However, in this case, the best way to learn conditional formatting is just to play with it, right? So let's say we go back to our conditional format. Well, I am in this column. Let's go back to our conditional formatting. Let's manage our rules. Let's delete this rule. Apply, okay. But now let's play with, okay, what are the color scales? Well, in this case, I click color scales. I need to manage my rule because I only applied it to here. I'm going to go back to 10,129. Oops, I deleted it. Somehow the colon's not there. There we go. Okay, what we've done is we've essentially set up a heat map type situation. If you know what a heat map is, the values are progressively ranked from green, which is supposedly good, all the way to bright red, which is bad. And you have to define what that is. Excel has automatically picked the color variations just based on the pre-formatted one I chose. Now we can go to this rule, edit the rule. We can make some changes here. We can make it a 2-scale color instead, just red and green, and say, okay, I don't want the yellows, right? So you can make some changes. Let's go back to our 3. You can mess around with the lowest value, highest value, the percentiles. I'm not going to cover that now because that would take the rest of our night. But the best way to learn these is to go try it. Get some data and try it. See what it does. Create some rules that say formulas only top or bottom ranked values, only values that are above or below average. That is pretty straightforward, right? So let's say I do above. In this case, above average, I want to go ahead and format, and we'll just make this easy and just do the fill color right now to be this color. I won't change the font. Below, I'm going to change this to be, maybe we'll make it a green. So okay. We'll say okay. We're going to apply. Well, this is the below average one. Now, any row that has a value below the calculated average of all this data in this column will be green. And then I could set a new rule to do above average. So you can do a lot with conditional formatting. It's very powerful, especially when you're looking to create a visual for data that you want to call people's attention to, something specific. However, at the end of the day, I don't care how much conditional formatting you do, you conditionally format a spreadsheet with 10,000 rows, you still have said nothing, right? You're not going to give this to someone you work for and say, oh yeah, well, I've conditionally formatted all the rows that are below average. You still have told no story whatsoever, right? No one's going to paste you here and say, oh yeah, that looks good. So it's very handy when you're doing dashboards of some sort, the conditional formatting, or if you have smaller data sets. Typically large data sets we visualize with graphs, charts, and tables, dashboards, pivot tables, those type of things. So let's do this. Let's wipe out. We can clear all our rules right here from the entire sheet. So we're back to just straight vanilla here. Today, we want to do some summarizing of our data without using a pivot table. It's possible. And draw some conclusions without using a pivot table. What I'm going to do is I'm going to freeze our data, which we talked about last week, so that when I scroll down, I can see my column headers still. So I'm going to go to freeze panes. I clicked on where I want to freeze on B3. I'm going to do my freeze panes, my gallery up again. And now you see when I page down, I've got my headers. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to page down to the end. Obviously, descriptive statistics are the first statistics we typically do with any data, especially when we do Six Sigma projects in supply chain, any kind of analysis projects within supply chain. The first thing we do is we look at descriptive statistics because they tell you a lot about the data. Descriptive statistics are averages, means, medians, modes, those type of calculations. So if we look at our data, one obvious question that would come up, what's our average credit limit on our cards, right? Excel has some built-in functions that will help you with that. If you go down to the bottom of the row, or really if you go anywhere in the spreadsheet, if you go to the bottom of the specific column, you can use the automatic formulas. So if I go down here, credit limit on credit card, I go to the bottom. I could type in the formula to calculate the average. Or if I'm at the bottom of the column I want, and I go to the Home tab again in the ribbon, there is an auto sum option. If you click that drop down, you've got some options, some further options. If I hit average, Excel will plug in the formula for the average of all the data above the cell where I am working. As long as you have numbers. If you have a bunch of text in your first 10 rows, it won't include those. It'll just include the numbers up to the point where it doesn't find numbers anymore. So it guesses. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not what you want to do. But if you have a straight shot of numbers like we do, you can see the formula has been plugged in for us. We just hit enter or tab, and we have our average. The formula being the average of all the data in column N from row 3 to row 10,129. So we have our average credit limit, $8,632. What's our revolving balance on the credit card? Well, we can do an average. I can either use the shortcut at the top. I could take this formula and copy it over here. However, in this case, you'll notice we talked about anchoring your variables in your formulas. In this case, I did not have this one anchored. So I had N3 through N 10,129. When I copy that formula over one column, Excel will automatically change my data variables to be one column over. Right? If I were to take this and copy it down here, I'm going to get the same value. However, you'll notice it could be wrong because when I copied it down a row, we had 3 through 10,129. Excel adjusted everything to be, I moved it over one column and I moved it down one row. So now I'm starting in row 3 and ending in 10,130. That can give you bad results. It didn't affect us because we have a blank data here. It didn't affect our average. And the one we dropped at the top wasn't enough to change the average. So that's why when we have formulas that we know we're going to copy and we don't want to have that reference change, we put the dollar signs in. You can click between the N and a 3, hit the function, the F4 key. It'll automatically put the dollar signs in, or you can type them in yourself. So now I have an anchored formula. So now wherever I copy this guy, if I copy it over here, I'm going to have all N's, right? I'm going to get the same. I'm not averaging this anymore. I'm not averaging column O anymore. I'm averaging column N. So if you know how you're going to copy stuff, if you give it a little forethought, in this case, we know we always want rows 3 through 10,129 because that's where our data is. But we know we're going to move this formula across columns. If I'm going to move it across columns, don't anchor your column, but anchor your rows because you know you're never going to use anything besides 3 through 10,129. So we're only anchoring with the dollar sign our rows, but we're letting our columns adjust when we copy our formula. So now when we take our formula and say copy, if I copy it across to 2 others, I'm going to have the average for column O. I've anchored my data rows, and now I have the average for column P. I've anchored my dollar rows. These are all correct numbers now. That's what I was referring to a few minutes ago when we talked about anchoring when we did conditional formatting. All right, let's say we want to, well, let's talk about formulas very quickly. So we have some shortcuts at the top. We can do average, we can count, we can do a max, a min, and we have some more functions. The other way to enter functions, here's your function bar right here. Functions always start with an equal sign, and then you type your function. Most beginning Excel students have no clue what function they want. So they have a little function key, which says insert function, brings up a pop-up box. You can type in, what do you want to do? Or they're categorized. For instance, I want all the financial functions. I want math and trig functions. Let's say I want to do statistical functions. Here's my average. And it tells you what the arguments are. So functions require arguments. That basically means what data are you going to pass into the function to do the calculation, right? We've got some very advanced statistical tests here, which I'm not going to cover. But you can do standard deviations, you can do slope calculations, skewing, ranking, quartiles, all kinds of calculations you can do. If we did our average and said, okay, a pop-up box will come up and it's going to prompt you to put in the right information. In this case, what do you want to average? You can put in a data range like I did here. You could say N3, N4, N5. I don't think it would let you do 10,129 rows. But if I want to just average 3 cells, I can just type them in here. And then when I hit OK, there's the function. I would average N3, N4, N5. That's the format of the function. So you can enter cells with separated by commas, or you can put the data range in, which we used right here. Obviously, large sets of data, you're going to use a data range, right? All right, so we can do descriptive statistics to help describe our data. Let's see, is there anything else I want to do here? I don't think so. We did all our descriptive statistics. Let me get into, let's draw some conclusions from this data, because that's where the fun stuff begins. All right, let's say we just want to visualize our data. We need to visualize. Somebody's asked us to tell us what's going on between males and females with respect to whether they're a customer or an attrited customer. They've let their cards lapse through attrition. Is there any significant difference between males and females? Okay, simple enough. So what we want to do now is we want to, sounds like a good use for a chart, doesn't it? So let's go with, we're going to want to count. Well, let's first, before we even go there, let's do this. Let's make this easy. Let's just look at existing customers versus the attrited customers, right? Let's just first highlight our column. Let's do an insert. In the middle of our insert tab, you've got charts. You can do all kinds of things with charts. So if I just hit, if I select one column and I selected that recommended charts option, the only recommended chart Excel gives me is a bar chart, right? Horizontal bar chart, which tells me basically the count of existing customers versus attrited customers. Now, in this case, what I want to do is I want to get rid of this row. Oh, but I just hit it. So I'm telling you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take, unhide that. We'll come back to that. All right. So in this case, let's just get my two options. So I can already quickly look, and I've got blanks, which means I left some blanks in there. Well, there aren't any counts, so I don't have blanks. But you can quickly see that I've got over 8,000 existing customers versus less than 2,000 attrited customers, right? So that's not a great chart. Doesn't tell us much of anything, does it? So let's look at how would we look at males and females between the two. One thing we need to do, we're not going to use a pivot table. That's too easy. Get rid of this. I don't need this anymore. And create another data. Oh, it's because I have it down here. All right, let's go back to our data. All right, I'm back finally. Let's get rid of this. We don't need that. Let's create our own chart. Let's not use Excel. Excel's not giving us what we need. So without a pivot table, and I've given this assignment before, without using pivot tables, how would you create a chart that shows me the number of existing male customers, number of attrited male customers, the number of existing female customers, and the number of attrited female customers without using a pivot table? So in that case, we're going to have to do some calculating on our own. So let's go to the bottom here. I need to know the numbers of each one of those options, right? I need to know how many attrited customers are there who are female, how many existing customers are female, how many males who are existing, males who are attrited. You get the idea. I need to calculate that data. So let's say I'm going to just take this existing cut. I don't want to do that. Let's come down to the end again. In this case, I'm going to put this down here, but I want to, oh, it's because I have the columns frozen. Let me undo that. when you freeze the columns, it makes it kind of squishy when you have large data sets because it always takes you back. All right, so I want to call this male existing customer. I'm going to say, it's probably easier just to type it than to copy it. Traded customer. I want to take these two. Let's copy these. Control C. Click here. Control V. And now I want to change this to be a female. And I want to change. Of course, I'll probably want to spell it right just for laughs. There we go. All right. So I've got, well, gee. No accounting for typing after 6 o'clock in the evening. All right. So I've got the 4 options that I want to investigate. Now we're going to have to do some counts, right? We want to count how many, let's just start with how many male customers do we have? In this case, there is a function. You know, you want to count the number of rows who are male. Well, I want to count. Excel, tell me how to count. Tell me how to type. There we go. Tell me how to count. Gives me a bunch of options. There's a count. We don't want to just count the number of rows. We want to do a count if, because we want to count the number of records if column D is an M, right? So we're going to take that count if function. The pop-up box asks us for the range. Well, what's our range? We know our range. Our range is going to be column D, all of our data, right? So I'm going to come up through here and say all of that data. D2 through D1128. What's my criteria? Well, if it's an M, right? And what did we get? Did it work? There we go. 4,769 of these records are M. Now, because I know I'm going to copy this function all over the place, I'm going to go ahead and anchor these. I'm going to make this an F and see if we truly have. Does that look right? Something's wrong, isn't it? The totals can't be 9,000 if we have 10,000 rows or 10,129 rows. Well, it may be. The best way to tell is you can highlight your numbers. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see Excel gives you the sum, the count, and the averages. So I have 10,127 total. I have 10,128 rows. I have 1 header row. It's right. It's 1,127. So that's a split between females and males, but that's all we have. We don't have whether they're existing or not, do we? So to do existing, we're going to have to do a count if with multiple criteria. I want to know if column D is an M and column B says existing customer. That's a different function. It's a little different. It's basically just adding S to this function. You'll notice that when I type a function in the formula bar, Excel comes back with the hints of what you need to have. In this case, a Countif function, the first thing it wants is the criteria range, right? Our criteria range is column D, all the data. And then what is the criteria? It's an M. We can leave this in here. That's exactly what we want. Now it says comma criteria range 2. In other words, where are you going next? For us, I'm going to go ahead and copy this. Remember, arguments to functions are always separated by commas. I'm going to copy this. Now what I want to know in my second criteria is in column B. So I want to change this to B. And you'll notice when I do that, Excel highlights the 2 columns you're dealing with. I don't want an M anymore. Now I want existing customer. I have to type in what I want Excel to look for. Now I have 4,072 existing customers who are male. Well, now I want to know the number of attrited customers. I can just take this function, copy it down, and just make some changes. I still want to know the males. The only difference I want to know now is if they're attrited. Whoops, I got rid of my quotation. 697. So I do the same thing. I have female. I'm just going to copy both of these down. I'm going to look at my female. I want to change to an F for existing. And then I want to change my F, my male, to a female for attrited. So now I have my counts. I've got, if I highlight these 4 cells at the bottom, you'll notice I have 10,127, which is what I should have. I now know how they're split. So now I want a visual. I can highlight what I want to graph or chart, go back to my insert tab. I could go to my recommended charts, and it gives me all kinds of options. This is a function that was added, I think, in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, but don't quote me on that. It might have been a little earlier. Is the recommended. So Excel comes back and says, well, here's what your data is going to look like if you choose one of these options, which is actually kind of cool. One thing is I was working at HCA and it's just boring charts. You also don't want charts that are cute and overly exciting. You want to tell a story, right? So if I did a pie chart, that doesn't really tell me a great story. It might. I can see that the largest percentage of anything I have are female existing customers. Not by much. It's a little bigger than my male existing customers, but I can see right away that my attrited customers are rather low, right? So that works. I could do a horizontal chart that shows very quickly the existing customers are higher. I can do a vertical bar chart. What does this essentially tell me? It tells me that there's not really a significant difference between males and females. Visually. Now there's tests for significance. If you want to get into that kind of level of analysis, I highly recommend you change your major to supply chain. Take the Six Sigma course and the other data analytics courses that we offer, and we'll show you how to determine significance. That was a plug. You get that for free. You don't pay for that. All right, there's some other charts that are visually different, not charts necessarily you would normally see. And you can pick any one of these. Let's go ahead and go with this one. All right, so I got those. If any of you have been in my classes, and I see several of you have, this is a failing chart, right? This is a failure because I can't look at this chart and know what it is. First of all, every chart in life must have a descriptive title. Must have a descriptive title. So in this case, we are looking at customer attrition by gender. We could say customer status by gender. Come up with your title. The other problem with this chart is you have no idea what the y-axis is telling you. You could assume that's customers. This one's not too bad because you could assume that. It's always better to put an axis title. So the way you do that is you click on your chart. You'll notice that there's nothing here right now in your top options. When you click on your chart, 2 more options come up. One is chart design, one is format. If you click on chart design, because you've clicked into a chart, you come over here to the add chart element. You can add all kinds of elements to your chart. This is where you can add a title if you don't have one. In this case, we want to add an axis title, and we want to add one to the vertical. And you see when I hover over here, I've got a title here now. If I just type in number of customers, that's a pretty good chart. My Excel always defaults to gray, and I've never taken the time to change it because I'm too lazy, but you can. But you want this to be, in this case, click on the chart. If you click on the color, you can change all the font color in your chart in one time. So in this particular case, do I really need a title on the x-axis? Probably not. You know, a title down here that says customer status is pretty redundant. I can see what they are. Now, maybe I want to fancy this up a little. Perhaps I want to say, and this is a small chart, so I can do this. Let's say I want to make these attrited a little different color. If you click once, you get the data series. If you click a second time, you get just that one box. And if you right click on there, you can change the fill to whatever you want. Let's say I want to make these 2 orange just to make my chart stand out a little bit. Make sense? So that was pretty easy. So with that series of analysis, we've determined that there's really not a significant visually difference between females and males when it comes to the attrition of their credit cards. All right. Now we did the chart that Excel picked, right? You could also do, let's look at our data. Let's do our insert. If you just go and say, well, I'm going to create the bar chart myself, you've got various different types of bar charts you can do. You can do the same type of chart. You can do a slightly skewed 3D chart. You can do the horizontal chart. You can do skewed the other way, pointing at your 3D chart versus pointing away from you. So you've got some options. The difference with these are you're not going to get the x-axis labels like this. So if I do this chart, well, it will, never mind, I take that back. It will end this one. I'm going to show you something in a minute that doesn't. Oops, get out of there. Let's do this one. So you can fancy up your charts if you want to. Same problem. I don't have an y-axis title, right? All right, let's analyze a different data field. Let's get a little more complicated. That was way too easy. Way too easy. Let's do a histogram. Histogram is a great way to show frequencies. Okay. Now, let's go with something simple. Let me do a quick time check. Oh, 7 o'clock. Sweet. All right, let's get rid of this because it's causing too much space to be used. Let's go with something simple that would be relevant for a histogram. How about credit limit? We want to know what is our dispersion of credit limit across our 10,000 customers. All right, so I want to do a recommended chart. Let's see if it's going to give me this. Histogram. Those of you who are in supply chain will know this is a Pareto chart, which has absolutely no relevance here. But let's look at a histogram. Let's let Excel generate ourselves a histogram. A histogram basically gives you what we call different bins for each bar. Those bins have ranges. In this case, Excel has magically picked out of the wondrous of Bill Gates' programming expertise that this range should be from a credit limit of $1,438 to $2,938, right? So Excel picks something of its own. That's fine. It's a good start. We look at this and say, okay, this doesn't tell me anything. I need to change my bins. Now, if you right click on the axis and go down to format axis, you can make some changes. However, you're limited. Excel limits you. You can say, all right, it's automatic. Let Excel pick it. I'll live with it. You could determine the bin width yourself and say, I want a bin for every 1,000. No, I don't want to do that. Let's say $2,000. Okay, you'll see the bins change now, right? Bins have changed. Let's say I want for every, and the bins are now 2,000 apart, 1,438 to 3,438. I don't know if I like that. Let me just say, you know what? Just put it in 10 bins. Okay, well, now it's come up with something new. When you let Excel pick, however, you get very specific numbers. What if I just want less than 10,000, 10,001 to 20,000, 20,001 to 30,000, 30,001 to 40,000, over 40,000, right? You can't do that by these options. You got to create your own histogram. Let's do that, shall we? Get rid of this. It's not what we want. All right, we're going to create our own because we know better than Excel what we want. All right, that implies we're going to have to calculate some data. So what do we really want in life? Well, and think about when you create your labels, they're going to show that way, they're going to show up that way in the chart. So I'm going to start with perhaps less than $10,000. And then I want a category of perhaps 10,001 to 20,000. I don't know if you noticed that when Excel did this. Let me do this again. It drives me nuts. I've actually emailed Microsoft, but they don't care. They have not answered me. I'm waiting on my answer. If I take the credit limit and I do an insert and I do my histogram, bonus points, if this were a class, bonus points would be, if I have the credit limit of 2,938, where does it show? What bar will it be on? This bar says 2,938 and this bar says 2,938. That just drives me nuts. It's inconsistent. True. So is it inclusive or not? Yet another flaw of Microsoft. So we'll just do our own. We want ranges that are relevant to what we're studying. So in this case, I'm going to do something specific, which means 20,001 to 30,000. I'm going to do one more. So what would be a great way to figure out how high I need to go? That's a great question. Whoever asked that, thank you. We could just go to the top. We could sort and see what our highest number is, right? All right, I'm going to guess right now because I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, I want to show if we have anybody greater than 40,000. I don't believe we do, but I want that in my histogram to show that. All right, so I've got my categories. Now we've got to count how many rows fit into each of these categories. First one should be pretty easy for you. I'm doing a count. I'm not summing these. I don't want to know the total value. I want to know how many rows. So we should do a Countif function. What's the range? Well, I'm in column N, right? So I know I want column N. I'm gonna go ahead and anchor my, I'm not gonna anchor that. I'm gonna do column N. Yeah, I am gonna anchor that. N, and I know I wanna go to, whoops, 2. I wanna go to 10,129, or you can highlight the whole row if you want. Okay, that just does a count though, right? It doesn't tell me anything. Whoops. I forgot the if. We forgot to count if, right? So there's my range. I put my comma. It's now asking for the criteria. In our case, our criteria is going to be I think for a minute, less than 10,001, right? Because I want to include 10,000, which means this is wrong. So I'm going to make it less than 10,000. We're going to do it the other way. Let's see what I'm doing wrong here. Always use your help box if you've done something wrong, because it helps you. I want to do less than 10,000. So I think I had a space in there or something. If you get a number, that tells you that you have the right formula, right? If you get an invalid, that means you've messed something up, like I just had a minute ago. All right, so I've got a number, 7,374. But in this case, if I'm going to do less than 10,000, then this really is going to include 10,000 to 10, whoops, 999, right? That would be the better way to do it. You can do it any way you want, obviously, but let's do this because this might make more sense. 999, all right, and then in this case, it's going to be greater than or equal to 40, right? So let's just change this and make it greater than or equal to. It must be consistent. Don't use words in one place and symbols in another. All right, So it doesn't matter what you put here. Just be sure that your calculations match what you've selected. So we've selected less than 10,000. Likewise, if I just take this formula, I've anchored everything in my data and I copy it down to my greater than or equal to, it should be very easy for me to say greater than or equal to 40,000. Bingo. We didn't have any. Right? So now when we look at the ranges, we got to do something different. We got to use something a little more powerful, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and take my Countif function, throw it down here. I now need a Countif with multiple criteria, and we covered that already. If I throw an S in here, right? So I want my Countif, in this case, if it is, how do I want to do this? Let me see, what's the best way that I want to do this without making this too cumbersome? We don't want to make it too cumbersome. All right, let's do, we want greater than or equal to 10,000, right? And then we also want another criteria, and I'm just going to copy this because it's easier. My second criteria is going to be the same column, but in this case, I want it to be less than 20,000, or you could say less than or equal to 10,999, however you want to do it. So let's think about this. I want to count all the number of rows in column N that are greater than or equal to 10,000, and same column less than 20,000.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but did you mean to put 19,999 and 29,999 instead
That's
of?
what it says. I don't know what you're looking at. Are you sure you're looking at it right?
Yeah, you're right.
Look again. No, I think it's right. Yes, I did. I'm sorry. Typo. Thank you. As soon as you started saying that, I thought, darn it. All right. Thank you very much. All right. So now we got our labels right. That just goes to show if you put your labels wrong, you've got a mess in your graph. You got to really think it through. Fantastic. Okay. So now using the Countif S formula, which is Countif with multiple criteria, we have 1,490 rows that fit this criteria. Now, since we've anchored everything, I can go ahead and just copy this to the other two and just change my criteria. So in this case, I want greater than equal to 20,000, less than 30. And then finally, I want it greater than equal to 30, but less than 40. All right, so I now have my data. Now, if we highlight our data, we do an insert. In this case, I'm going to do just a simple bar chart. And I have, voila, we have a histogram without titles, which you need. For instance, we need a title. Well, let's just go ahead and play that through. When you have a title, you can click on here. This is basically credit limits, right? Credit limits, frequency, something to that effect. We can come up with something better, I'm sure. All right, I want to add my chart design, my add element. I want both axis titles. I want a primary and I want a vertical. So in this case, this is going to be, again, number of customers. This is going to be credit limits. All right, so I can see the vast majority. I can draw a conclusion from our data. The vast majority of our 10,000 customers have credit limits less than $10,000. Vast majority, right? So that tells a better story than the histogram that Microsoft prepares for you. If I compare these two, I'm truly trying to draw a conclusion from my data. I can't draw much. I could say, yeah, majority of our clients, our customers are in this range. Now, looking at this histogram, may come back and say, okay, that's great, interesting. However, I need to know this broken out further, right? I can either go recalculate these. I could do something like this and say, okay, well, the majority of our customers are less than 2,938. So I can keep breaking this down in various aspects to get to what I am. It all depends on what question are you trying to answer. This may answer the question enough, or it may not be discrete enough, and you're going to have to go down to smaller intervals. So we've been able to create some charts that show some conclusions on the data. Let's do another one that requires a little more difficulty. I like to just keep going up in difficulty. Let's look at, let's move this. Let's get rid of this one. Let's move this out of the way. All right, this was number of customers. Let's start thinking about, what about contacts? How many times, contacts means how many times, yes, Heather, I'm sorry, didn't see it.
I was just going to ask you, I don't know if you did this before I came on, but have you shown them how to use the green fill handle?
I have not. I'll come back to that.
I wanted to put it on the docket because of the time. So
Yep, I will do that. All right. And if I don't get to it, that'll be the first thing we cover next time. All right, so I want to do contacts. Contacts is how many times has the bank contacted this customer this year? Every time I contact a customer, there's a cost associated with it, right? It may be $1.16 per customer, but if I have 10,129 customers and I contact each customer 10 times, that's going to add up. And I can tell you now, it's not $1.29 a customer either. It's higher than that. So let's talk about, is there any relevance to the number of contacts versus the credit limits? Do I contact, logic would tell me we contact these people more because they have higher credit limits. So perhaps they're better customers. I don't know if we can make that judgment, but logic would say we contact these folks more on the average. So let's look at an average. We got to calculate an average. In this case, this is going to get a little more complicated, but just as much fun. So we don't have some, what's the word I was, what's the adjective I was going to look for there? We'll go with exciting. We don't have an exciting little shortcut from Excel to do a multiple criteria average easily. I don't think, is there one? I've never done it if there is. Let's take a look. Let's look at average. Average A. Now, see, that's just average F. Wow, we can do this a lot easier now. Wow, Office 365 has a lot more functions, by the way. A lot of you are shaking your heads. I didn't even know we had this. Let's do this. The way I was going to calculate it was simply calculate the numerator and denominator separately. Cumbersome, but very doable. For those of you that know what division is, it's pretty easy. I know that we use calculators now. We're not so into division anymore, but let's try this. I've never used this before. This will be fun. All right. It's going to operate the same way, I assume. Matter of fact, if it's going to ask for the average range criteria, I wonder if, and this is where you get to play, and I love this stuff. If I just take this, move it over here. I don't want to practice on this one. I'll come back to that one. Let's go back to this one. Let's play with this one because I've already got multiple criteria. All right, instead of Countif, I'm just going to change this to average, right? Now it's going to tell me what I need to have. So the average range, whoop, this isn't going to work. My average range needs to be contacts, right? Contacts are in M, column M. Let's go down here. All right, so I need to have, what range am I going to average? Let's do a quick copy here. I want to, and a comma, I want to average what's in column M. And the criteria are in column N, I want the credit limits to be greater than or equal to 10,000 and less than 20,000. Hypothetically, this should work if I hit enter, unless I've missed a comma. How about that? Wow, that was a lot better than what I was going to do. What I was going to do, whoops, was basically calculate the numerator and then calculate the denominator and do it separately. This is a whole lot easier. Now, when you're preparing data for presentations and all, this is not a valid result. Nobody cares, right? Figure out what the precision is that you need. In this case, I'm going to format it, and we talked about that last week. I'm going to just 2 decimal places. We are not creating a vaccine here. We're not dealing with medical healthcare. We don't need out to that many decimal places. It has no relevance. So I'll just go at 2.47. All right, so I should easily now be able to create these. Criteria should be the same, except again, I just need to change my variables. There's that one. This should be a 3, and this should be a 4. Okay, I got to do something a little different with this one. Not too hard now. I can just copy that in. I can make this an average. Spell it right or it won't work, obviously. I don't need the S. Shouldn't need the S. I'm only averaging with one criteria, right? We'll see. Again, I haven't used this before. Let's put a comma there. Let's put the M in there. What didn't it like? Let's go into here. 129. Well, that should have worked. Let's do this. Let's do our average if. Let's do it this way. I might have something typed wrong. So we know that we want M2 through, oops, through M10, 128. Since we got rid of that row. We know that we're going to do the same, our criteria. Oh, see, that's what's wrong. When you only have one, it's reversed, just like Countif, right? Remember, when we had 2, the first thing it asked for is what range do we want to average? It's reversed it here. Now it's asking me for what range do we want to look at? Here's the average range. So it's all reversed. That's why it didn't work. So my range is in column N. I want less than 10,000. My average range is going to be the data in column M as in Mary. Now it worked. Which makes sense. It's consistent with the Countif function. So I could take this, copy it on down here for our last one. Greater than 40,000. What should the Excel come back with? Bonus points if somebody knows what's going to happen when I hit enter.
It's
Nobody
going
knows.
to say 0, maybe?
Nope.
No?
Divide by 0. Your denominator is 0. Can't do that. So there's a couple things you can do here. You could say, use your if function. If, we haven't covered this yet, but there's an if function. Basically, the if function says, after the parenthesis, you put in what the test is. In this case, we want to say if, in this case, we'd have to do a count if, well, you know what we could do to make this easy. If this value right here, which is what we already counted, equals 0, comma, and I'll come back and cover this again. We want this to be 0. Otherwise, we want to actually calculate the value, close our paren. Now we got 0. So what does this do? The if function basically says, you put an equals if. Your test, A equals 3. That's your test. What do you want to test? A2, sorry, A2 equals 3. And I'm making these numbers up. They don't mean anything. You put a comma after your test, you put whatever you want to happen if your test is true. So if A2 is 3, A2 equals 3, the value in A2 equals 3, I want to put a Y in my cell. Then you put a comma. The next function you put in is what you want to have in the cell if A2 equals 3 evaluates to false. Oops. Close your parentheses. So it's the test, the value you want if the test is true, and then the value you want if the test is false. Evaluated to false. So in our case, ours is a little complicated. Our test is, what's the value of cell L10,135? If it's true, I want to calculate the average, right? I'm sorry, if it's true, I want it to be 0. Because we said if this equals 0, if it's true, make the value of my cell 0. If L10,135 is not equal to 0, calculate the average if. And then we've got rid of our error. Because you don't want to create a histogram with the divide by 0. It just doesn't look pretty. You don't want that. So what are we going to do with this, you ask? Well, let's create a graph. Let's go visual. So we could look at a couple different ways. Let's go to our insert. Let's go to our recommended charts just for grins. Nothing looks too exciting here. It doesn't tell me anything. What if I went to, let's see here. What would I want to do? Let me go look at some options over here. Well, is that what I really want to do? I want to add another one. Now let's just do those. All right. In our case, let's create a graph that looks at customers versus contacts by credit limits. So I am going to go grab this data again. I'm going to do an insert. I'm going to go to my line graphs. I'm going to use this line graph. I don't like it, but I'm going to use it. Now we know that the number of contacts is very small, so it's not going to show very well, right? However, this is going to be interesting the way we have this. What I don't like about this is I don't like the choppy line. I want smooth lines. I want this to look good. So actually, I'm going to come back and do, I could have just changed it in the chart. I'll show you that next week. I'm going to do a line chart with the data points for each column. All right, now I've got good data points, good circles showing what's going on. If I click the data series or click the line, format data series, I want to come down to the bucket, which is where you can change the colors and all of this particular line. I want to make this a smooth line because that just looks better. And I can make this one a smooth line too. It's not going to really matter because it's a straight line. Oops, I didn't click on it. When a line is on the axis, it's very hard to click. Or if two lines are on top of each other. So what you do is go back to your line, go to where you want to be for the smooth line. If you come up here to the series options option, you could go select the one you want since you can't do it with your cursor. And now I'm on it and I want to make that a smooth line. Of course, it's not going to make any difference. All right, I pop a title on here. I pop a y-axis title on here to show what this is, number of customers. The story that's told, somebody tell me a story here. What's this graph telling you based on the question I asked a few minutes ago? Oh, wait, we forgot the question a few minutes ago, didn't we? The story is, and I can see it right here without doing a visual, there is no significant difference in the average number of times I contact customers based on their credit limit. Right? So if you have a credit limit less than 10,000, which is where the majority of our folks are, we still only contact you around 2.5 times a year on the average. And then if you have a large credit limit, we still contact you only 2.5 times. So you could have a data table like this in your presentation, which is okay. Because we're only looking at what, 5 different options here, 5 different categories. You can have a chart to tell us a good story, regardless of how our blue line is varying we only contact you 2.5 times. Now you could go and right click, add some data labels, so that since they are so low, you could go ahead and put your data labels on here. I should be able to move that. And that actually puts the value, and maybe I'll leave that one there because of the blue line. Since they're so low, you can illustrate, hey, it's only 2.5, 2.45, 2.47, 2.46, 2.52. Right? You can put data labels on all of these. It's not necessarily necessary here. It might make it too busy. Right? So basically, it's just putting your values on your line. So that's a good visualization of the answer to the question that so many of you have asked late night. Will my bank contact me if I have a higher credit limit? All right, we're almost out of time. Wow. We covered a ton. I recorded this. I don't know where I'll put it. I'll put it somewhere. I'll find a way to put it somewhere because you listened. You may have been trying to go along with me. I went pretty fast with the data set. It might be helpful to be able to go back and review what I did. The best way to learn this stuff is just select your data. When I'm talking about tables, charts, and graphs, what can you do? Here's all charts. So what would it look like as a stacked column chart? Well, pretty irrelevant. Or I should say, yeah, irrelevant. Doesn't tell me anything. Right? What would it look like as an area chart? Well, I don't know if that tells me anything either. That tells me, does not tell the same story, does it? If I had that in a presentation, I would have a senior executive just say, what are you trying to say there? Not getting it. The scatter graph, it's the same thing without the lines, right? Not quite as effective. Sunburst tells you absolutely nothing. Map won't even work. A funnel's not going to tell us much of anything. So you can play with all these different types of graphs and see which one tells your story. Here's a combination bar and line. Sometimes this will work, right? One data series is a bar, one data series is a line. So you can visualize your data in the way you want to tell your story in your presentation. The key is be sure that the graph is telling the story you want it to tell. Many times they don't. All right, so who has a question? We're at 7:30. If you got to go, that's great. Sign off. You've fulfilled your obligation. You've done your hour and a half. Hopefully you've learned something. We have another session coming up. And if you give me one quick moment, I'll stop share real quick and I'll tell you when that is before we leave. Very quickly, I can tell you just at the drop of a hat. Well, a couple drops of a hat. Make it a slow drop of a hat. March 22nd. Okay, we did February 22nd. So March 22nd is our third session. It is on the Ignite schedule. April 12th is our fourth session. So who has a question? I don't know, before somebody asks, I don't know where I'll access that record. I'll put the recording somewhere. I'll figure out something where you can get to it. I'm not very versed at MTSU of how we can do that, but somebody's done it before, so I'll figure it out. And I've got all your email addresses. Who else has a question? Dexter, you got a question?
Yes, my first question.
All right. Is?
When how do you unlink a pivot table from a chart?
Well, I'm going to cover that next week when we do pivot, or next session on pivot tables.
Okay.
Otherwise, we'll just confuse the heck out of everybody.
Okay.
Dexter, if you can call me anytime, Dexter. We can go over it if you need to do it for an assignment.
Okay.
Dexter's involved in our supply chain management student organization, which you want to join. I'll be plugging that one next time. Who else has a question? On the S drive, that's an opportunity. Thank you. All right, nobody has a question? Any feedback, anything? Give me something. You guys are too quiet.
Why would you not use a pivot table for the task you just did?
We will.
Okay.
We will. Yep. Pivot tables are easier for most of these type of things, but as a well-rounded student, Dexter, you should know how to do it without a pivot table.
Okay.
Just saying.
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. So to finish that thought, the reason I didn't do the pivot table, Dexter, because it allowed me to show how to do formulas and all, and charts and graphs.
Yeah. I haven't had the opportunity to use the Countif function in work or school.
Oh, the count if, the average if, the sum if, those are powerful functions.
Mm.
Powerful functions. Who else has a comment? Criticism, complaint, happy thoughts?
My happy thought was that I very much enjoyed it, and I always learn something new.
Oh, good. That's
So
great feedback. I appreciate that.
yes, thank you for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening, and I'm looking forward to these other ignites that you're doing.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Good deal. Anyone else?
Hi, that's all I can say. My video is not working this evening. I don't know why.
Yasmina, that's the student president of the Supply Chain Management Student Organization. We are graced with her presence.
I like the
I'm sorry,
flower.
I was not able to get my face on the screen. Like I said, I don't know what's the deal with my camera, but most of you know how I look. But anyway, yeah, some things that I've seen tonight, the way you're doing it, I feel like I mean, it comes out the same way, like when you go from I don't know, 15 decimal number to 2 decimal number. What I do, I just go and I click on in the home button up there, I just click on a percentage and it takes me down to 2 decimal instead of going through all those steps. I don't know, maybe it's a good way to show students all the way how to do it and different way to do it, like several different steps. But I feel like I kind of like using the shorter steps just by one click, like just going on the home button and just clicking percentage button, and it's going to take me from all those decimal down to just normal 2 decimal numbers. Or
If it's not a percentage, that doesn't work.
well, that's what I'm saying when I'm talking about percentage.
Yeah,
Only-
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a great shortcut. So I think one of the most common problems that students have when they do assignments for me is they don't understand precision. I don't know where we dropped that in high school or college, but if you have a table of data and you have 4 columns of dollars and 2 of the columns go to cents and 2 of the columns carry it out to the thousands, which makes no sense for currency anyway, that's just bad, right? That's something you'd want to turn in at a company, right? Or if you have like data somehow and you've got all these, this column's got 2 decimal points, this one's got 9 decimal points, this one's got 15 decimal points, this one's in scientific notation. If there's not a reason for it to be different, don't be consistent and think about the purpose, right? So the number of contacts per year does not need to be out to the 10,000th decimal point. It's irrelevant, right? Many would say you don't need any decimal points because you can't contact half the time. But when you deal with averages, you want something to show whether it's closer to 2 or closer to 3, right? So you need to understand your problem, the environment you're in, what the precision is you need to use. And I think that's a problem a lot of students have trouble with. They don't understand what precision, or they don't pick the right precision. Heather, what you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, I think it's really good to understand what's going on behind the quick thing that you're doing, because like I was going to bring up Format Painter for the last one, and then I thought, they need to know what's going on behind it first, because I didn't even find Format Painter until 6 weeks ago, but I know how to do the stuff behind, so I can do custom things. So it's great. It saves time. And that's another reason why I waited on the fill handle, because that's awesome and saves time.
Yes.
But if for whatever reason you're not working in 365 and you don't know how to do it, you're screwed. So
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Can you do that on the Mac? I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm gonna have to research
tried
it.
when I started at MTSU. When I transferred from Motlow to MTSU, I took the accounting classes and I had a Mac computer and I tried. Boy, did I had an issue with that or not. I had to go and buy me because I had all my computer laptops that I have in the house,
Yeah.
they are Apple. So I had to actually go buy me a Microsoft program and install it to both of my laptop and my desktop to be able to use the Excel, because you do not want to mess with the Excel on Apple product. It is no
No.
fun, I'll tell you that.
No, you don't.
No,
Yeah.
those two does not go together. Also, I want to say thank you. And I think that's one of the great idea when you mentioned that if you want to learn, you have to go and play with it. And that's, I think, how I learned a lot of things. It doesn't matter whether it's that Excel, whether it's that, I don't know, any other feature out there that we are using nowadays, like, what I'm trying to say is, anyways, playing with it makes you learn more instead of just kind of doing what you're supposed to do. Because when you click out there, when you go and you click out several different charts and you compare those charts, which one, as you said, tells the better story, then you can actually understand it better.
Yep.
So definitely that was a great point. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. It's better than any book, believe me. And like I said, when you get stumped, just Google it. Somebody's done it before. There's nothing you can come up with, most likely, that somebody hasn't tried.
Oh, I've done Googling a lot when it comes to Excel, especially when I'm doing stuff for work and
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
how to do it. And even when it comes to homework, to be honest, it gives me instruction, but I'm still not clearly understanding the instruction. So here I am Googling how to do this and that.
Yep.
And watch the short video or instruction. It helps a lot, definitely.
Yeah, it does. And then the fourth session I'll cover, Mr. Excel is a pretty good one on the internet. You got to be careful. There's a lot of losers out there. They'll tell you something and you spend 20 minutes on something only to find out that whoever wrote that particular web page doesn't have a clue what they're talking about because it doesn't work.
The guys in LinkedIn Learning that we have access to for
Yeah.
free are pretty good. And also Wall Street Prep Excel is awesome. So
we'll cover those in the fourth session. I'll probably have I think last year I did a little email out to people that gave the links to the better ones, as well as 2 tutorials. 2 tutorials are good. I find them kind of slow because they cover mundane stuff, but the best way is to play with stuff, especially when you're talking about charts, graphs, and when we get to pivot tables, the best way to learn is just choose the options and see what it does, right? Hopefully before you're on a time constraint of having to have something done in 10 minutes, however.
All right, well, I'm going to leave. I guess I'll see you tomorrow, not once, but twice, actually.
Sounds good. Yeah, you probably need to get to bed, Yasmina. You're getting up in a few hours.
I know.
thank you for your time.
You are most welcome. Does anybody have anything else? Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'll figure out the recording and we'll see you on the next session.
Wonderful. Thank you again.
Take care, Brittany.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Good
Good night,
night.
Yasmina.